Welcome to Everything's Relative, a podcast about surprise DNA discoveries. I'm your host, Eve Sturgis. This is episode 15. Hello, everyone. So here we are in November. 2019 is just sailing right along. How was your Halloween, everyone? We had a blast. I put a photo up on our Instagram of Dallas's costumes. And I have to say, there is nothing like Halloween with a 4-year-old. It's so fun. He really loved it. So here we are. This is another episode where the conversation is a little bit different than my traditional conversations with an NPE. This person reached out to me and offered to talk about her experiences with using modern donor conception. So if you listened to episode 5, you know why that's of interest and why it's important to find out how it's done in this day and age, especially because in episode 5 and other adults discovering that they are from donor conception, we can all assume that the process has changed over decades, but I don't really know. So it was great that this person offered to reach out and talk about what it's like for her and just give me some ideas that I hadn't thought of before. So this woman wanted to keep herself anonymous, and I hope you understand why. Before now, I wouldn't have thought anything that she had to say was very controversial, but I am learning that there are just so many different perspectives in the sort of DNA discovery phenomenon and the NPE world. There's a lot of feelings in every facet. So she decided she didn't want to be named. And so she's not named, you guys. But she was so generous to take time from her workday and explain the ins and outs to me of how the basic sperm bank procedure works. And I'm looking over my notes that I took, and I can hardly make heads or tails of my own chicken scratch, but I know that one thing that really struck me when we talked was about hoping that love and support can be enough to satisfy a growing person's needs. And I think that is such an important concept that's changing with time and something that comforts so many people when they're faced with all of the unknown and uncontrollable parts of raising a child. For me, I know this was really an idea that I leaned into when I was raising my oldest daughter on my own, and it was just the two of us here in LA. So before I start to cry about that, I'm going to go ahead and roll the tape. This is episode 15. This is the podcast Everything's Relative, and I am Eve Sturgis. All right, so here's what's been going on my side of things.
Okay.
I started this podcast because, let me back up. Let me say that again. So let me talk about it from my side of things. And then you talk, and then it will become clear why we're merging together.
Okay.
Not 2 years ago, but a year and a half ago, a man called my husband and said, I think that I'm Eve's real dad. And he was correct. And we figured that out through DNA testing. And in that process, I discovered this whole world of people that are connecting and discovering all of these things about who their real parents are, and it's because these mail-in DNA kits are so easy to do, so much easier than it used to be. And then also so many people are finding out as a surprise, it's a shock and it's a surprise and it's devastating. And it's uncovering generations of secrets and of varying degrees. And you know all this, and everybody knows all this, but it just makes sense for me to kind of go over the history of things.
Yeah.
Because in the process, my biggest concern really in my heart is about people that feel shame. And how so many of these secrets are born of shame, and we have so much of it. I'm totally fascinated right now about our moral code in this country, world, and what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do, and what
it means if people do this, which is mainly what I'm talking about is sex.
Mm-hmm.
Although in my process, so then I wanted to talk to people who are finding out the surprise, because there's a lot of shame and emotion and unfamiliar territory about the surprise itself.
Yeah.
Sex notwithstanding. And then I met my Carla, interview number 5, and she talked about how what she discovered unexpectedly was that she was donor conceived.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talked to her, and that was something I had never ever thought about. She sort of like exposed or revealed to me like this whole world of what that means to her,
Mm-hmm.
or what that experience has been like, and what the history of that is, or some of the history. And then simultaneously, like, I follow, these different groups on Facebook and the internet and these message boards and stuff, of these communities of people. And a lot of the donor conceived people have a lot of things to say and a lot of feelings about
Yes.
it.
Yes, they do.
So that was my journey to you. And then you listened to the podcast, and then so graciously offered to talk with me about donor conception into that, like now, like modern donor conception. And I do have not a lot of questions. I mean, I do. I'm very, and I know that you're not like representative of like the same sex community, but
yes.
I do want to know if, like, is this stuff getting talked about at all? Because I never thought of it. And I have lots of friends that are in same sex relationships that have adopted or used surrogates or used donors. So maybe you could tell me like more detailed or intimate perspective.
Yes. Well, I do want to make that clear that this is my experience, and I in no way consider myself like the gay spokesperson. Though that would be a really excellent business card. So if someone wants to hire me for that, I am in. So I am married to a woman. And so when it came time for us to start talking about having a family, it was not going to happen naturally. So when we went out, we started looking at sperm banks and all of that. But at the time, when we first started working with the fertility clinic, they had us sit down with a social worker to discuss the potential implications of having a donor-conceived child. But that was about the extent of it at the time. I found out about the feelings of some donor-conceived individuals well after my first daughter was born.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was one of those like the barn doors already closed for that one. But
right. So what did the social worker tell you? What was the gist of what? I'm assuming it was a woman, which is not fair.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said I was assuming that the social worker was a woman. I said, what did she say?
You were correct. So basically she said, when you have a kid with a donor, you want to at least give them the ability to have coffee with the individual, which we kind of nodded and said yes for. But we did not. We kind of nodded, said yes, and then left, and we're like, that's actually not going to happen. We didn't bring it up with her because we were just trying to get something checked off that we had to spend money on. We didn't want to be able to work with the clinic.
Right. So she said you want to at least give the child the option to have coffee, or
Yes.
With the donor. Okay.
Yeah. To give them a chance to know about who they, got their genetic makeup from.
And I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm going to interrupt you a lot.
Probably. No, it's okay.
I'm just so, first of all, I had a lot of coffee, but secondly, I'm so, or reverse those. Did the social worker suggest if that should be as an adult for the child or as a child?
So let me back up a bit and talk to you a little bit about how you can buy your sperm if you're interested in purchasing. There's a bunch of different options. So you can go with a known donor, which is just then like you have Bob, who's the uncle, who then you explain is actually like the kid's dad, and they get to have a relationship. Or you can purchase a sperm with ID options, which then says when the child turns 18, they have the option to reach out to the bank to get the donor's contact information. And then there's also the completely anonymous donation option where you don't get to know who that is. They are number 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's who fathered you. So those are those 3 options. Mm-hmm. And of course, having a known donor means you have somebody in your life that produces sperm that you would want to have do this for you. We did not at the time. Mm-hmm. I have 2 brothers, but I wanted to carry, and my wife was not particularly interested in that. So, you know, and she didn't have any male relatives like that she would want to bring into this. Mm-hmm. And so the other thing is there is a very significant price difference per unit between ID options and anonymous. And at the time, the Supreme Court had yet to recognize the legality of my marriage. So we were receiving no insurance support for what we were doing. So we were paying everything out of pocket, and it was just not financially in the cards for us to be able to purchase something with ID options. I've since learned that a lot of banks don't try to maintain contact information for donors. So even if I had gotten someone with ID options, they would not necessarily be someone that they may not be able to reach out in 13 years and get a phone number that works or something like that.
Right. I was just about to say, who even knows what contact will look like in 28 years from today? Email might not be a thing anymore, or Facebook. Yeah. And definitely home addresses and landlines are such a archaic system for tracking people in the States. Okay.
So when we were sitting down to start baby making for our first round, we basically decided, okay, there's just no way we can afford to do this with the ID option. So we'll find someone we like without the ID options. And we're just going to be very active in the donor sibling community. And so when they're old enough to understand what's going on, we could say, look, at this point, we can't give this information about your biological father, but here are all of your half siblings, and we can have relationships with them. Let's have a family reunion, all of that sort of stuff.
Oh my gosh. Is that always an option with the anonymous IDs? They always all the siblings?
Well, so it's not it's an opt-in. We're supposed to inform the bank when we have a pregnancy, which we have done. But there's the donor sibling registry, which is, I believe, donorsiblingregistry.com. This is something my wife has been a lot more in than I have. And then the individual banks have their own registries as well. So I believe we were on both. And from that, we are now Facebook friends with 5 other families who have kids from the same donor.
Oh, that is fascinating to me.
I know. It's both really cool and really weird.
Yeah. Okay. So is it it's like an ancestry.com, but just for donor siblings? I think actually even Carla talked about that in episode 5.
Similar. So here's the part where I haven't done any DNA testing. I'm not a part of Ancestry.com, so I don't even really know what that looks like. But it's, as far as I understand, it's literally just a message board where you go to the individual bank and you say, I had kids from this number. And then someone else can chime in and say, I also had kids from this number. And so they connect that way. And so once we got names, we all just became Facebook friends. And now we have a group chat that we all pop in and out of.
Wow. And are they all local-ish?
No.
Okay.
No. I have one local we just connected with 6 months ago that we still have yet to have a play date. We've been talking about it for that long. And then I have one's in Rhode Island, one's in Iowa, one's in, I think, Illinois, one's in Minnesota.
And my next question is, did everybody connect initially with that donor at the same place? Did the donation get purchased at the same place?
Yes, they all did. Yes.
Is he traveling? Is he traveling, or is the...
No, it's the units are traveling, as far as I understand. So I believe what happened is, so we went out of Fairfax Cryobank. And so I believe what happened is they purchased another bank that was in the Midwest.
Okay.
And so some people picked up from Midwest, and we did Fairfax because shipping for units is $200 a pop. And again, affordability was an option, was a concern
Right.
for us. And my
Right.
wife works for herself, so she could go pick up the unit, drive it to the clinic, and drive the tank back once they
Right.
took the stuff out. So
Okay, so wait a minute. Now I'm understanding that sperm can be donated at one spot,
Yep.
one place, but then shipped all over the country.
that's what they all do. Yeah.
Oh,
So I am on the East Coast. I could order from California Cryo, which is a very popular bank. I could yeah, all over the place. And that's when people do known donors, sometimes they'll like donate at a clinic in California and they will fly it across country to the clinic in New York, or sometimes they'll just like, I guess, FedEx it in a specimen cup. I have not been into that side of things. I'm not sure exactly how they do that.
Okay, so gone are the days when the man was just like in the next room.
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, that's
okay. Okay. Or the doctor was leaving for 10 minutes and saying there was a man, but really he was the donor. Okay.
No,
Okay.
so it's actually kind of like speed dating. So if you ever go into a fertility clinic website, you can look up all of the donors. You can classify by race, hair color, eye color, whether they like cats or dogs. They give you their sign. They have a complete medical history of everybody. And then they have like staff impressions, which we always like, staff say that this donor is very handsome. And some say staff remark on this donor's remarkable eyes. And like, okay, so they're not cute, but like they got pretty eyes, like that kind of stuff. And
that's totally like dating. Okay.
Yeah. And the one we did only give baby pictures. And so there was a lot of like, okay, this is a cute kid. Do you think it's going to be a cute adult? I'm not sure. And then they also break it down into preparation types. So there's like a bunch of different kinds you can get. You can get one if you're just doing like an intracervical insemination, intrauterine insemination. If you were doing IVF, it's a different amount of motility, which is like live sperm per unit. And the other weird thing is like for each donation that the person makes, that could be broken out into multiple vials.
I asked that. No one knew the answer. Okay.
Yes, they definitely can.
Okay.
And that, at least that's my understanding of it. Again, I'm not an expert. I've just spent a lot of time looking at a website.
Do you know? Okay. You're not an expert, so I will not ask you too many.
No, you can go for. I've Googled a lot.
How many vials one donation can create?
That I don't, off the top of my head. I think it depends on the person.
Okay. How much sperm produce?
Yeah. Exactly. Because if you're doing ICSI, which I forget what that stands for, but basically that's if you're doing IVF, they'll harvest your eggs and then they literally take one sperm from the sample and inject it into one egg to fertilize. Wow. So, when we did IVF for my second kid, we actually had them refreeze the vial so we could use it for later.
Okay. Amazing. All right. So, So are you comfortable telling me what you and your wife did choose?
Yeah.
For your daughter?
Yeah. So we ended up getting a specific number, and we went through 3 different donors because, it was for whatever reason, they were all like at the tail end of their donations, or they only had a certain amount of ICI vials available, which were the cheapest kind. And the fertility clinic goes thaws it and does a wash and account anyway. So it doesn't matter if you buy ICI or IUI, you're still paying for that service. So you might as well get the cheaper one.
Okay.
So it started out and the other part of it is I am CMV negative, which is a specific kind of virus that you get where if the donor is positive and you're negative, it can cause some pregnancy issues. And so they just told me to get all CMV negative. And so that actually winnowed the pool down a lot because there were not that many. I'm not quite sure why, but it's like a cold or something like that where it's, if you don't have it, it's fine. But if you it's one of those, like if you have a cold when you're a kid, it could be a problem, but when you're an adult, it's not. I don't quite know. I'll just cut that part out. But so that winnowed the pool a lot. And so starting out, my wife went out and made a spreadsheet of all of the different donors and who did this and who was artsy and who was studying engineering and all of that. And so we had these very in-depth discussions and we picked one and then ordered 4 units. blew through those in 2 months, no pregnancy. More arguing, well, not arguing, more discussion, picked another one, ordered 4 more vials, blew through those in a few months. And then I moved to IUI with Clomid, which is where you get put on a fertility drug to produce more eggs, and then they do the IUI when you're ready and all that. And so that went down to just one vial. And so we were finally like, okay, I just got to pick someone. So someone tall. That's all Meg wanted, because no one really looked like her, and she's got light hair and blue eyes. I said her name. Oh well, we'll just bleep it. She's got light hair and blue eyes. I have brown hair and brown eyes. So like, it's not going to physically look like her anyway. So someone tall, and then we've like, this one's tall and he looks like Tom Hardy. Done. Let's go. So,
enough said.
Yeah. So we picked him, and it was the last unit of him on my second medicated IUI. And like the day before I went to get my blood tests, we were like, I don't know if it works. Like, should we talk about adoption and all of this? And then, of course, I got the call the next day, and they're like, congratulations. And I freaked out for the next 9 months. So, so that was what happened with my first.
Right.
My second, he had stopped donating. And so we were on the wait list for units for him. We got a call when I was 8 months pregnant with my first, being like, we have units available. Do you want some? And we said, I can't make that financial commitment right now, because you also have to pay for storage, which is like $50 a month. And so we were like, fine, whatever, we'll just pass. That'll be what it'll be.
$50 a month?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. That's
easy.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're like, well, if you buy 6 units, you get a year of free storage. Like, well, 6 units is like $3,500. Like, I have that in my back pocket,
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So then we got to the point where we were starting to think about having kids again. And then the donor miraculously had 6 units available, and they were having a sale. And we talked about doing it on Wednesday night, and we weren't sure. And then we went to go purchase on Thursday, and they were gone. So we started up doing that. We ended up having to pick another donor.
Hot commodity.
Sorry? Yeah, apparently. So we picked another donor, and I went through this for my second. I went through 5 rounds of medicated IUIs. I got pregnant, had a miscarriage, and then we were discussing IVF. And so this is the fun story. So all of the donor siblings that I talked about that we're Facebook friends with, they were all in the process of baby making their seconds as well. And so we're all just eyeing each other like, does anyone have a vial? Do you have someone?
Right.
And so I had one couple who was like, we're trying, but we're not going to need this vial. So we'll send it to you if you want. And we were like, we're not sure yet. And this was like September. And then in, like January, I'm like, actually, we do want it. And they're like, well, we just had a miscarriage and we're going to start doing IVF. So we're not going to do that right now. I was like, all right. And then one of the other families came forward, like, we have a vial, if you want it, like, how about that? So we like got the vial from them. They did the paperwork at the sperm bank. They shipped it to us. I was like, we're going to do IVF, but refreeze it. And so then another family came through, and they were like, so do you have any? Because we're trying to make ours. I'm like, yes, I do. And so we ended up sending that to them. So it just was this kind of like game of telephone with these files.
Yeah, or like musical chairs or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like some metaphor here that.
Yeah. So the funny story is we're friends with 3 other main donor families. We've added 2 in recently. But of those 3 families, one had babies in November. I had my daughter in December. One had their son in March. And then the other one is having theirs in this December. So
it's just one after the next.
Yeah. So it was just all of our baby making time, I guess. And it just worked out very nicely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That'll make it so fun to hang out.
So yeah. I keep saying when they're older, like and are better able to understand all of this, because mine is the oldest and she's not quite 5. So in like 5 years or maybe 7, I want to do like some kind of get together, like let's run a park somewhere in the middle and we can all drive and meet up with each other and have the kids have a chance to like talk to each other and get along.
Right. Wow. Okay. So I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Just to clarify, your daughter and your second daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, they both have the same donor?
Yes.
Okay.
Both of my kids.
Okay.
Yeah, both of my kids are 100% same genetics.
Okay. So and you will, there'll be no way for you to track who the donor is on behalf of your children. Okay.
No, I mean, not at this time.
Okay. And then, so what are but if your children choose on their own to do 23andMe or Ancestry.com or any of the oodles of companies that are tracking people, they may end up connecting with this donor anyway.
Yep, they may.
Yeah.
And they will probably, if they do that, they'll probably find more donor siblings. I suspect, let's see, so the ones we know, we have probably, hang on, I'm counting 3. I think we know 8 siblings from those 5 families, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's another 20 out there.
Right.
Which is one of those things when you discuss it in the hypothetical, you're like, that's crazy. There's no way that could happen. But in reality, these banks only limit donors to siblings only when they hit, I believe, 20 recorded pregnancies.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like not even including unrecorded.
Yeah.
All right. And so do you feel like you and your wife, have you guys discussed how you'll explain like the birds and the bees to your kids?
We've done it a little bit. So we've done Corey Silverberg's What Makes a Baby, which if people don't know what that is, I highly encourage you to go look for it. It is a gender neutral way of explaining conception that talks about all the different ways that you can do it, whether or not you're doing it with a doctor or different, if you're doing it the old fashioned way or whatever it is, because, the reality of today's world is that, yes, sometimes mommy and daddy come together with a special hug, but also mommy and daddy go to the clinic, or mommy ordered some broke college student from a website that got delivered to, a clinic. Like, there's just so many ways that it happens now that it's just should be part of the conversation. So we've discussed that. And so, my older daughter knows that some people have a sperm and some people have an egg, and that's what makes a baby, but we haven't gotten more than that. We have gotten, why don't I have a daddy? Which, like you have 2 moms. Some people have, mommy and a daddy. Some people have 2 dads. Some people have 2 moms. Some people have 1 mom or 1 dad. Right. And so she's, this is one of those with kids, they kind of accept the world as it's explained to them. So she's understanding that. Yeah. She wanted a daddy for a while because she thought a daddy wouldn't like make her go to bed on time or enforce rules. Which
right. Like, daddy is kind of like an imaginary friend or somebody really fun. I get it.
So we explained that was not, plenty of daddies enforce rules and make kids go to bed on time. And so we have a very close friends who have a daughter who's a little younger than ours. And so it's like, Uncle, makes his daughter go to bed on time. So why would you think that? And that cleared up pretty quick.
Right.
But yeah.
All right. And is there a lot of sort of discussion about the, to me, new, I don't know if it's new controversy, but sort of like all these feelings being expressed by adult donors now? Is that, do you know if that's much of a discussion among the same-sex community?
Again, I don't speak for the community as a whole. I have seen that discussion had in a lot of different queer parenting groups, as just, understand that this is one group of people who feel this way. trying to figure out how I want to put this. There's many different ways that people come to parent children, and regardless of how they come to parent them, some people have negative feelings about that, and some do not. So I am hopeful of the fact that if we are open and honest about this, and we make sure that our children are raised in a loved environment and get the experience that they want with two parents, that it will be a good experience for them in the long term. And like, will they probably have to have therapy about it at some point? Yes, but most people should, if not do, need to have therapy about something in their lives. So that is my hope. But it is in the back of my head. And this was actually a question that my wife brought up when we were starting for our second, and we did not have our original donors. Do we want to go for idea options for our second? And my answer was no, because I did not think that was fair to our current to our elder daughter, to say, well, your sibling gets to have a relationship with their, genetic father, but you don't. I didn't think that was fair, and so I said, no, we're not gonna do that to our eldest. I think we should just do the same for both.
I agree with that.
Yeah, well, so this is an interesting part. I was part of a large queer parenting group on Facebook, and this is how I found out about this community. Somebody asked, what did you do when you conceived your children? And so I just, like, middle of a workday, quick comment, like, we used an anonymous donor because that was all we could afford. Sorry, kid. Like, but we'll make sure you have good donor siblings. And unbeknownst to me, because I hadn't read through every comment, in a subthread, someone who was a child of donor-conceived child had been very frank about how their feelings were about this, and that they were upset, and they didn't get to have this relationship, and that donor siblings weren't enough. And so they laid into me in the comments and said something along the lines of, like, how dare you? You'll pay for this in therapy later. Like, it's really unfortunate that you feel this way. And I said, I'm sorry if this came off as a flip comment. It was actually something we put a lot of time and thought into. And I'm pregnant now, and I wanted to make sure that we didn't do this for this one, because I wanted them to have equal experiences. Right. And then they commented, like, well,
same kind of therapy together.
Yeah. And then they commented and was like, well, your second kid should have to suffer from your bad decisions. And then I just kind of apologized if I hurt their feelings, and it wasn't my intention. And then I miscarried like 2 days later. So those two things have always been very connected in my head because of that. Yeah. And so I try to have a lot of thoughts and feelings behind this, just in terms of, there's nothing I can do about it now. My children are here. And, if I had known about all of this in the beginning and tried to find money in the budget to purchase ID options, then I would not have the children that I have now.
Right.
And so I can't regret those choices, because that would mean that I would regret my children, and they are amazing individuals, and I feel very privileged to parent them. So I feel that's, I can't regret those choices. I understand their feelings behind it. And I want to be very open and honest with my children about how these things came about and how we did what we did. And it's getting to the point now with my kindergartner, I think it's time to start having a bit more of these discussions with them. But even then, it's going to be hard. And maybe it's not. Maybe she's just going to roll with it and be like, okay, that's how I was made. And then at like 16, I'm going to hear about it. I don't know.
Well, can I ask what you think is going to be hard about it?
I think it is going to be the lack of, I won't be able to have that experience with him necessarily, but that's also not necessarily the case. I've seen so many stories lately about people who do something like Ancestry and find their donor, and then get to, like, they have, the family reunion and reach out and get to know him. And then there's that story of the woman who conceived with a donor and is now dating him, which I think is hysterical.
Oh, I should find a link to that. I should put that up
Yeah,
on Instagram.
yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Right. So, okay, so you are imagining that soon you'll explain to your daughter, well, like we picked a man
Yeah.
that had some things we liked, and we got his sperm, and that's
Yeah, he wanted to help other people make babies, and so
right. And
you know
so,
we wanted help, and we put him. We chose him, and so you may not get to meet him, but you do have these people who can be parts of your lives. So now you're lucky enough you have like 5 or 6 new aunts that we can start talking about.
right. Or she may say, so she or another or children might say like, oh, so I do have a dad, and then you have to say, well.
Yeah.
There is a man out there.
Yeah. And that's a correction that I've had to make with like my parents and other parents where it's like, no, this is the donor. This is not the father. Because for me, a father is somebody who is involved in the raising of the kid and, plays baseball with them and talks to them about family stuff and, helps them mow the lawn. And to me, go ahead.
Oh, I just had not thought of that. The importance of rhetoric around this experience. And how, because also in the like adult NPE community, there's a lot of people that feel like the term donor is offensive to the donor kids because it means it means that the men that contributed the sperm aren't even worth a name, and therefore they as their offspring are less than. Yeah.
See, I've not been as involved with all of that because I have not had the emotional bandwidth, to be completely frank.
I mean, I wouldn't have expected you to. But that's interesting because I think that goes to show too, like a generational difference maybe. And like adults now, and these are also people that they're not everybody. They're not, no one has said I'm the representative of the adult donor community.
Yeah.
This is just like one sliver that I am seeing. But it makes me really think about rhetoric and how for them, but how important that is, the difference between a donor or father or, and then I definitely foresee your daughters getting super grossed out when they're like 14 or 16. Once they like learn about sperm, they're going to be like, wait, what? And they're going to be like, wait, a man had to like, ew, like masturbate, ew. I can just see a lot. I can see a lot of like girls squealing about that. At least I'm still squealy about the whole topic.
Yeah. I mean, but that's one of those where, regardless of the conception story, the act of their conception is kind of terrifying to a kid, whether it's right. Like having some fun times or going to a clinic, regardless, there's some part of it where you go, wait, what did you do?
Yeah, he put his what where?
Yeah. Or with something like ICI or IVF, it's like they do what? It's like the world's worst pap smear. Oh my God, that's horrible. It's like, well, It was not my favorite. No. Well, I haven't even gone to the part where I have embryos on ice that I have to figure out what to do with.
Well, I was about to say, I was just checking over our notes about what we were going to talk about. And I was like, okay, mechanics, we did that. What we choose when making our family, and then donor, and then, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So tell me, so you have stuff on ice.
Yeah. So when I did my retrieval, they got 9 eggs and all 9 fertilized, which is very unusual. And then only one was ready at the 5-day transfer, and that is my daughter. We like to joke that she volunteered.
She was ready.
She was ready. And everyone was like, that is a beautiful embryo. And we said, I don't know what that means, but okay. And so, the next day they're like, okay, you've got 4 that are ready for you if this one doesn't work. So we're going to freeze them. two are double A quality, one's like AB, and the other one's like BA or something like that. And so they grade two different kinds of quality. I don't know. But so potentially, we gave ourselves a year after our daughter's birth to figure out what we wanted to do with them. And she was born in December, so I have to decide soon.
Okay.
So we have to figure out what we want to do with them. And so I have considered donating them. But again, I don't know if that would be fair to my kids to say, here are all of your half siblings. You also have full siblings, but we don't know where they are. Like, I would only feel comfortable doing a known donation for that. But then that's also strange. It's got its own things. Like, do I pick a nice lesbian couple in the Midwest somewhere that I just stay Facebook friends with? Do I, offer it to a friend of mine I know is going through fertility issues, but we're not that close? Like, does anyone really want my genes? Because we get nearsightedness and a pretty high reliability of diabetes. Like, all of those strange questions I'm wrestling with. Or do I try to have a third kid, which probably I don't, but there's a possibility.
Wow. So, yeah, and I am suddenly imagining what it would be like to stay if you were staying in touch with a family, and they had used your eggs, and then they were making choices that you didn't agree with, in their life, and that was on Facebook. Like, for me, that would be really hard. So I'm wondering how much of this for everybody.
I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, that could also be.
It might just be odd to watch. But that makes me think that all of this is kind of about control and what we have control over and what we don't.
Yeah.
And there's like this conflict of, and maybe a paradox of control, which is like a human animal emotional need, combined with science and biology and just cells meeting other cells. So I don't have a conclusion about that. I just,
no, I mean, it's very strange for me to think that, like, I have never met the person who helped me conceive my children. I may never get to.
Right. Yeah. So that feels strange to you.
It does now that we talk about it. Because my children will have two parents, and my children will always have two parents. And then something strange happens and we divorce in 10 years, then they may have four parents, but they will always have two parents in their lives who love them. And that, to me, is the most important part of that, is will my children be raised with love? And, I also don't want their conception story to be a surprise. So whether we get out in front of it or whether they go, wait a second, how do two women make a baby? And we go, well, we've talked to her about the fact that we wanted to have a baby and we went to a doctor and the doctor helped us.
Yeah.
And in 5-year-old land, that is enough.
Totally.
And at some point, I feel like I remember several times when you're told something when you're a kid and you go, oh, okay. And then like later you go, wait a second, what is going on with that? And you delve into it more. So I suspect that that's how my kids will work.
You just take what is said.
Yeah.
My friend Maggie's parents one night told her that they needed her to stay up really late for a flight. And so they told her that beets were caffeinated. And so she ate her beet salad and then was wide awake for hours because they were caffeinated, and then like didn't know that beets were not caffeinated until like recently, like as an adult said something about it to someone and they were like, wait, what? That's
hysterical.
And I was told that, we went to the fair, went to the Petaluma County Fair, which I think is called, the Sonoma Marin County Fair in Petaluma Fairgrounds. And I got cotton candy, and we got home and I had to take a nap. So I put my cotton candy in the fridge. And when I woke up from my nap, it was all gone. And the adults told me that it was because cotton candy dissolves in air. And so I thought cotton candy dissolved in air until very recently. Like I thought it would just disintegrate, like evaporate. Totally.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I can totally see being told like, yeah, my parents went to the doctor and doctors help you. And that's how you have babies. Like that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. My story like that is that, McDonald's had signs up that said, no loitering. You have to be out after 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And until I was like 15, I was worried that someone was going to call the cops on us
Yeah.
if we were there for too long.
Yeah. You were like, let's go, guys. Like we have to go. Like everybody finish your paper.
Yeah, guys, there was one time we went up to Lake Tahoe and we got caught in a blizzard on the way home. And so we were hanging out in a McDonald's for a long time. And I was seriously worried that something was going to happen. And I was 12. Should have known better. But and now I look back and go, gosh, look at my untreated anxiety. So
yeah. Your adherence to authority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, anyway, that's kind of a tangent, but
no, yeah, sure, but a fun one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really am thinking a lot about this idea that it's not new to me today, but like this idea that love could be enough, and that honesty still is best.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of anything, honesty is best, even if it's honesty that you curate for the person that you're talking to. I don't need to go into all of the graphics of what an IVF retrieval looks like for my child because
No.
I don't even want to tell you everything that happened with that because it was not a fun experience. And if there's someone there considering going through fertility treatments, I don't want them to be like, oh gosh, what's going to happen to me? No, never mind.
Go in blind, people. Go in blind.
Well, yeah, honestly, I would.
Noted.
Or at least a little bit blind. Like something shouldn't be a surprise, but like, yeah. I don't know. The whole fertility experience basically is just like plan for the worst, plan for it to take longer and to cost way more than you ever thought it would. Mm-hmm. Is basically how that works. Our first one took 7 months to conceive, and our second took 6, but we had to do IVF. So,
right,
yeah, that was not fun. But it's worth it.
Yeah.
And then you go through pregnancy, which is its own fun thing. You know all about that.
I do.
But yeah, I don't want my kids ever to feel the lack, and I don't want my kids to ever. This is one that's like, about this because you're a parent. My parenting goal is that my kids can come to me if they have questions like this and they can get honest answers. Mm-hmm. So I try not to shy away from things like this. I also try to make sure I ask my kids if they have questions about things. Like my daughter did a dance recital a few months ago. And so, she was talking about what she wanted to do. And I said, well, what are you going to do if you get upset? And she's like, well, I'm going to go give mom a hug. I was like, well, you're going to be on stage and mom is not. So what else could you do? Like those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. Or the day before I was induced, I asked her if she had any questions. And, she wanted to know if the new baby could wear her Cabbage Patch Dolls clothes. Could not.
Okay.
But
I was going to follow up with that. What?
Yeah. No. Little too small.
Not as small
but
as
like
Cabbage Patch. Okay.
Yeah. But that was what her concerns were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. So do you within the community that you are in these days, mm-hmm. Among people that are considering donor conception, mm-hmm. do different parents have different ideas about that, or is the general trend towards honesty?
So I'm not. I've left most of my trying to conceive groups because I'm pretty much done with my baby making mm-hmm, mm-hmm. now. So I don't need that support anymore. And it was just bringing up a lot of feelings for me to be back in there. So I was like, we're going to move on. But basically, from what I've seen is when people start talking about how they want to start their conception journey, someone will bring up like the Donor Conceive Support Group on Facebook and share that there are people who have these thoughts and feelings and to consider that when you are making your choices. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a lot of go in with your eyes open.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, however you choose to make a family is how you make a family.
Right.
As long as you're open and honest, you know.
And just to clarify the thing that you said in the beginning, which
Yeah.
is when you met with the social worker and she said it's really best if you can provide the opportunity to have coffee with the donor.
Yeah.
And you and your wife said, well, no. And that was because of the cost, correct?
That was because of the cost. That had nothing to.
You're not anti have coffee with donors. You just thought, well,
No.
we can't afford that option. So
Yeah.
So that would be nice, but it was unable. It's not realistic for us.
Yeah, I would have loved to have that option. It cost us about $8,000 to make our first child, which, you know, if you're discussing adoption, that's like a third of that cost. But if we had done the identity options, it probably would have been in the 12 range, and that would have been out of reach for us.
Right.
So.
Okay. Do you, all right.
Well, I will say that the other part of that is we live in Maryland, and so Maryland has laws that say if you use a donor, you can have two moms on the birth certificate. Like if you use donor and you're married to a woman, you can have both parents on the birth certificate. I believe my donor sib family that's in Rhode Island, they have very specific things about you have to have a specifically anonymous donor. I'm not sure of those details. I probably shouldn't even be mentioning that because I could be extremely wrong, but I think that was why they went for that specific choice. So there sometimes are issues beyond that. But for us, yeah, I would have loved the ID options, but once we did it for one and had a kid, that door closed. I don't think it's fair to the other ones.
And so on your children's birth certificate, it has both of you on it?
Yep. Has me and my wife. Has no mention of anyone else.
How does that feel?
Awesome.
Yeah.
it's one of those where I know a lot of people who still pursue second parent adoption for the non-gestational parent because in our current socio-political climate, it's getting a lot less queer friendly. And so the concern is similar to before when DOMA existed. If you go out of state and something happens, could they deny you the right to see your children?
Right.
We have not.
Horrifying thought.
It is. Oh no, it is. But that's one of those where it's a horrifying thought because it's happened. And there's multiple stories about people being very, very ill and in the hospital, and the children or the partner being kept away because they were queer and the people at the hospital didn't like that.
I have always thought about it as from partner to partner in that scenario. I have never considered what it would be like for a parent.
Yeah.
I had not thought of that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I always wanted to make sure that we put my wife on the birth certificate in case something happens and I go crazy and decide that I want to cut her out of our lives. I didn't want to do that to her. I wanted to make sure that we had something in place to make sure she had the same right of access to our kids as a heterosexual couple. Not that I foresee myself doing that, but, people change, and it doesn't seem right to me to have her invest, or for our kids to have this relationship that grows. I mean, she's honestly closer with my daughter than I am. She's been home with her a lot more than I am because I am the person who goes out and works the most. And so to take that away from both of them because I could just seems like I just wanted to ensure we had legal protections in place for that.
Yeah.
Which is why I should probably pursue second parent adoption. But that is like thousands of dollars that I don't really have to spend right now because I've got 2 kids in daycare. So
sure. So you don't have second parent adoption, but she is on the birth certificate.
Yeah.
Okay. And is your marriage recognized in Maryland?
Yes.
Okay. It was
recognized.
They were like, we don't recognize marriage, but we do recognize birth certificates. But I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
No. So what happened was DC legalized it so we got married in DC. Like literally we drove across the street because we lived right on the DC Maryland border and got married in a little park. And then we had our big marriage ceremony in Maryland. And then the next year, Maryland passed same-sex marriage and that it would recognize out-of-state marriages. And that was like we got married in 2011 and was it 2014? It may have been 2014. So like 4 months before my daughter was born, that DOMA got overturned. And that was a huge sigh of relief. Like we all kind of knew it was coming, but you can't take anything for granted. But we were all pretty sure.
We all think we know what's going on right now, and it feels like if there's any lesson in not knowing what's coming, it is right now.
That's yep.
I mean, for everybody in different aspects. I don't just mean presidency.
Yes.
I mean,
well, I was just thinking about this into your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, like the Supreme Court and the state by state and marijuana versus. It's just, and I guess my podcast. I guess my podcast is about not knowing what's coming too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This is all so interesting. Is there anything else that you want to say about it that I didn't ask?
I don't
I
don't know. So the one thing that I've always kind of maintained on my own is that I don't want my kids to do a mail-in DNA test until they're 18. Not because of the donors, but because I find some of the terms of services for those very strange, and that it concerns me that like another company might own someone's DNA.
Right.
Or like the way that they're like batching DNA to share with pharmaceutical companies, or even the way that they caught the Golden State Killer. It's like, that's great, but also, is it?
It's vulnerable.
I don't know.
It's like an unforeseen vulnerability to have our DNA as a commodity that gets traded and bought and sent, but also identifies us. There actually was a discussion the other day because somebody said they didn't believe in DNA tests or they didn't want to do the DNA test because the Mormon Church owns all the companies and they don't want the Mormon Church to have all their information. So then there was a whole thread of like clarifying what that meant. And so that's not exactly true, but it's also not exactly wrong.
Yeah.
It's capitalism meets science meets government, and now meets the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah. Well, and the other part of that is, and I think I shared this story with you a couple of times because I thought it was very pertinent for our discussion, is the story of the woman who did like a 23andMe for her 5-year-old through a donor, through a sperm bank, and they identified a close relative that I think was like the kid's grandma, and she reached out through like an ancestry site, and then the donor bank like threatened to sue her and took away her vials she'd paid for future kids. And so that's
I'm sorry. So wait, let me go over that again. She got a 23andMe for her daughter.
Who was conceived through a clinic. And then so she did that through the clinic. And, the same way that it pops up your close matches that we all, So a close match popped up. So the test popped up a close match for her daughter. And so she reached out and just said, hey, we're here. We're open to contact if you are. And that close match responded and said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then like a week later, the sperm bank called and was like, what are you doing? You said that you wouldn't try to contact anyone until your kid was 18. We could sue you for like $40,000. And also you have like 4 vials on ice with us. You don't get access to those anymore.
Oh, okay. So she inadvertently exposed a donor situation that those people didn't appreciate.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, I mean,
layered, man.
Layered, lots of layers. So I'm all of this is stuff that goes on in the back of my head that I think about, and then sometimes I'm like, let's not think about this right now because your children are very young and things you should worry about in a few years, but for right now, let's just get through today. So
yeah.
I'm still going to just get through today, but it's been in the back of my mind that we need to start figuring out better ways to do this.
Better ways to do donor conception or donor?
Oh no, better ways to discuss donor conception with my littles.
Okay.
Though I'm pretty sure what'll happen is I'll explain it to the first one and she'll tell the second one all on her own.
Like, do you know?
Yeah. Did you know Santa isn't real? Like, I expect that my younger daughter will not get to discover anything on her own because my older is just very, very involved and very into sharing.
This was so cool. This has given me so much to think about, and I hope it gives everybody involved something to think about, but I hope it gives like adults who are discovering their donors things to think about, and then it's also information for everybody to just know how this works a little bit more. I never realized how much I didn't know. I just never thought of it.
Yeah. And this might sound terrible, but I hope I don't get hate mail, honestly. Like, this is something that I said I would talk to you about this, and I talked to my wife before I said, yes, I'm in, because I wanted to make sure that sharing our kid's conception story with the internet as a whole was okay with her. And she was like, well, I mean, they're going to find out anyway. So, but it was a concern for me because, I didn't realize it at the time, but there are a lot of feelings from donor conceived individuals that I had not taken into account, and that is from my place of privilege. I'll own it. Like, it just hadn't occurred to me to look for that, and so hopefully people will have compassion for that, I guess. Or maybe not. Maybe that's another privileged thing to do. Maybe I'm asking them to do my emotional labor for them, but I just hope I don't get hate mail.
I hope you don't get hate mail. I'm definitely not going to provide any contact information for you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to hunt me down somehow.
Right. If anybody has anything to say, you can say it to me. You can contact me. My email is eve@everythingsrelativepodcast.com. And what I really appreciate is just how vulnerable you've been. Like, you're right. Like, you've come on to discuss this really hot topic, and you're really being honest about it. And I just think that's really incredible and a gift. So I'm really, really grateful. And I think that the whole point of all of this, and it's implicit in my pursuit of, lessening shame, and it's implicit in I hope in my podcast in general, is that, like, we have to start talking about all of this. Because like, you had never thought about it, and I had never thought about it. So
and it's one of those where, when you're a queer couple, suddenly everyone is very interested in how you conceive.
I read in a way. Oh, I think maybe that's in a Practical Wedding article. Essay once, where it was like, that's the number one party question when you're a gay couple or whatever. Like,
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That was like when people offer you sperm at dinner parties.
Yeah.
No, I actually not at a dinner party, but I did have that happen. Yeah. And I was like, thanks. I'm gonna leave that alone. But yeah, and then the one person we considered asking and had kind of like low key felt out, and he was like, I don't ever want kids. And so then we got pregnant. He's like, why didn't you guys ask me? And it's like, well, we did, but we were all kind of drunk at a party. But anyway, when you're queer, people are very interested in how you conceived. And then, are you guys going to do it like The Kids Are All Right? Like, that was one movie that that was just a movie. No, we're not going to do it that way.
I hadn't even.
People can make different choices.
Okay, but what if it really is Mark Ruffalo?
I mean, if it actually is Tom Hardy,
right?
Because I don't think Mark Ruffalo looks like Tom Hardy. So if it actually is Tom Hardy, I will be ecstatic. But I'm pretty sure it's not.
Probably not.
Yeah, but it is really funny though, looking at the donor siblings. Like, some of them definitely look similar. Like our youngest, when she was born, looked very similar to one of our donor siblings when they were born. My older daughter, and one of the other daughters have like the same face shape and nose. Like it's interesting. And that's been one of the things I've been listening to your podcast about, and everyone talks about how like no one looked like me or no one had feet like me, and I'm like, okay, well they can do that with their siblings. They can get that from there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Gosh, I feel like I come to the end of these conversations so often, and I'm just like, I don't know what to say except this was amazing. Thank you so much. I sort of want to like, I sort of feel like if we were together, like not on the phone, I would just be walking around the house all day and just coming back to you like every couple of minutes, as like ideas came to me or thoughts came to me, and I'd be saying, this is a trip, man. Like, yeah.
Well, and I rehearsed everything I was going to say in my head for like weeks, which is then when we pushed this, I was like, oh no, I had it all in my, and then of course none of it came out the way I had it in my head.
No, you sounded so articulate. I'm so appreciative. This was really, really helpful. I feel like thrilled and excited to have new information and have a stimulating conversation and have all these things to think about. It's all about the way the world works around DNA. It's just not black and white.
It's not. And, as reproduction gets more and more medicalized, we're going to have more and more of these conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just something to,
Yeah. And yeah. Okay. So great. Wonderful. You can go back to work. Like, this is amazing. I'm so excited. I'm gonna, we can hang. I'm gonna stop recording.
Okay.
Stopping recording now.
Extra special thanks to that person for their vulnerability and willingness to share the sperm donor process. As I go through this new world and navigate it for myself and watch others have their own journeys, I am really struck by the importance of rhetoric, the words we use, the language of this phenomenon. Sperm donor as a phrase is a hot topic in the NPE world. And also even the word father is a word that has like a lot of meaning that people want to be careful about. And I am not very good at explaining this because it's a little bit hard for me to understand, but for people in the NPE world who discovered as adults that they were conceived by sperm donor, there's a lot of sensitivity about that phrase. And for a lot of people, it feels offensive. If you refer to the person who fathered you as a sperm donor, if they weren't actually through a sperm donation facility. Does that make sense? And yet, for a lot of people, using the phrase sperm donor helps them when they're referencing the person who fathered them if they don't get to have a relationship with them. So it's complicated. Feelings get hurt, and I don't totally know how I feel about it. And like I just said, I don't quite totally understand it. But I certainly don't want people's feelings to get hurt. But I also understand that people are struggling to understand this experience within the confines of our language. Like, we don't maybe have the words yet for all of this. So it will be interesting to see what kind of language develops out of this phenomenon and what sticks and how we learn to, describe the different people and the different roles in this funny situation. Yeah. So, hey, let's talk about next episode because it is a special one. So in 2 weeks, so what I did is I drove to the house of Julie Dixon Jackson, host of the Cut Off Jeans podcast. We had a really fun time. We did kind of a crossover episode. So this is how it's going to work. We're both going to release our episodes on Sunday, November 24th. I normally release my episodes every other Friday, but the next episode for me I'm not going to release it until Sunday. So I just want to give you a heads up about that. But the episodes go together. It's really fun. You can listen to one or the other in any order, I think. But they go together. And I think that's just going to be, I think it's going to be so fun. And then, you guys, I am going to take a break for the holidays. After that, it's Thanksgiving, and then for our family, it's Christmas. And it just feels like a crossover episode with Cut Off Jeans is a great way to end the first season of Everything's Relative. I talk a little bit more about my story that I've never revealed, and I take my first DNA test with Julie. So when you come back in January, I'll have all the results, and I'll be rested with new energy for season 2, and we'll get deeper into the current phenomenon of DNA discoveries. So, it just seems like it's a good time to do that and take a break and get a little bit more rest. And in the meantime, that makes me, sorry, hold on, I'm going to interrupt myself to say it's funny to think that I'll get a little more rest during the holidays when probably I will just be exhausted and need rest from the holidays. But anyway, in the meantime, follow Everything's Relative on social media. We are at Everything's Relative Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook. At Eve Sturgis is my Twitter. You can contact me, Eve, at everythingsrelativepodcast.com if you want to send me an email. Review us on Apple Podcasts. Tell all your friends. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye. Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis is produced by Kaylin Egan and Eve Sturgis. Eve Sturgis is a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, but the conversations she has on the podcast are not therapy sessions. Logo design by Ivy McNally and music used with permission by Goodbye the Band.